those who have lighted the flame within us. And then we have what we use as a responsive reading sometimes, so I'll be the call and he'll be the response. It's called We Remember Them. And it's adapted by Roland Gittleson. We remember them. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them.
In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them.
In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them.
In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them.
In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them.
In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them.
When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them.
When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them.
When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them.
So long as we live, they too shall live.
For they are now
a part of us,
as
and we remember them.
Good morning. A reading from the Word of God, as it is written in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, reading from verses 50 to 58. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither doth corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I shew you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable always, abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
So as you know, Bill was an incredible fan of history and also particularly loved history of a lot of the Old West and of train travel and how trains connected the nation. And in honor of him, this is a piece by Elizabeth Cotton called Freight Train.
Dave and JC and I would like to thank you for coming today to remember and celebrate my dad. It is comforting to us to have people here who we know meant so much to him and to whom he meant so much. It has been no easy task to put into words just how much my dad has meant to me and to so many others. And in a few minutes, I hope that you will share a few of your stories about Pop with us. In whatever capacity you knew him, teacher, friend, colleague, or family, we can all agree that we are better for knowing him and blessed to have had the opportunity to share our life's journey in some part with him. Pop's childhood was not an easy one. He lost his brother Mayor and his beloved mother Fanny at the age of 5, leaving him, along with his papa and brother Lloyd, devastated. However, he often spoke of a strong D.Schraer family presence, of aunts and uncles and cousins during his childhood and adolescence in Fall River, Mass., as well as good friends in the Sea Scouts and a high school guidance counselor, Tom Doran, who offered him great support even after he had graduated from high school and completed his service honorably in the Korean War. His guidance led Pop to Boston University, where he also interned at McLean Hospital with his best friend Richard, and where he met an amazing nurse, my mom Beverly. Through graduate school, several postgraduate internships, my birth, and demanding but fulfilling careers in education and nursing, my parents had a wonderful life here in Middletown, where they were active members of the Unitarian Universalist Church, a congregation that helped my parents find a balance of faith and subsequently a second family. Pop was a member of the Lions Club, the American Legion of Mount Hope, as well as the Mount Hope Historical Society. They were together for almost 50 years until she passed in 2008. The three of us had an amazing bond, not always easy, and quite often loud with an adolescent in the house. My dad often said of my 16-year-old self, "Boy, Lenny, you were tough." But at the heart of our family was communication, respect, love, and fun. And as many of you know, Pop was always a teacher. He didn't necessarily need to be in the classroom. He could be in the kitchen. He could be at the grocery store, or just walking our dog, Missy, or actually she was walking him. And he would stop and talk with you, and we'd always have a kind word and some advice. So he was always guiding. His actions had intent, purpose, and behind each was care and concern for those he loved. Family connections always meant so much to Pop. Our visits to Cape Cod and to Fall River, Mass., to see Papa, Uncle Lloyd, Aunt Joni, our cousins Rita and May, Jonathan, my closest cousin Sarah, and her family, including her husband Ron, sons Mark and Ross, were opportunities that he cherished because for him, it meant sharing stories and reminiscing about our family history. My mom's family, who made the wonderful trip from Indiana to be with us here today, our Indiana kin accepted Pop immediately as one of their own. Our trips out west to see them were filled with reunions, storytelling, blackberry picking, Christmas Eve festivities, and travels to various family-related historical landmarks, experiences that he spoke of often. As has been mentioned, my dad was a history buff, and I always found our family structure on my dad's side to be so very interesting, to have so few cousins on his side of the family that were actually my age, but decades older, who could, like my dad, talk about major world events that we would only read about in history books like Pearl Harbor, World War I and other events in World War II, the Odessa pogroms, and cousins who were trained as teachers in normal schools. As a kid, I was so annoyed at having to watch the show The World at War. I preferred Donnie and Marie, Sonny and Cher. But as I grew up and I listened closer, I realized that these events were a part of his family history, my family history. And so fast forward in 2012, my dad accompanied me to a conference in Greece. And as we planned the trip, he said, how would you feel about taking a stop, a little detour before we head back home? And that stop was to his papa's home in Odessa, Ukraine, where Papa and I visited the Potemkin Steps, the Odessa Opera House, and synagogues to search for our family name, which we found. So for me, that trip, our history, had become tangible. Papa's forever changed after my mom passed. She was his rock and was really the only one who ever had the key to his heart. We found our way, though, as a family, creating new traditions and making new friends like Louise Phillips, Kathy Urensky, and more recently my Pop's aide and BFF of 3.5 years, Maxine Phillips, who had an immense impact on Pop's quality of life. The addition of JC in 2009 to our family dynamic was a blessing, adding much perspective and understanding. I suddenly found myself reflecting upon and appreciating more my parents' life experiences and their decisions. For example, Pop's great love of music would manifest as Saturday and Sunday morning music concerts in our living room. He loved Baroque, classical, and romantic music and had a great record collection. Records. He often spoke of aunts and uncles who took him to see concerts. One that really had an impact was a performance conducted by Arturo Toscanini in 1938. His love of music took root and became my own passion, coupled with teaching, shaping the rest of my life. In those early years of my music learning, Pop would wait in the car through countless flute lessons, during which he spent writing and revising his book chapters, using only his car light. And in recent years, when I found myself, in fact, sitting in my car, writing lesson plans or writing a paper by car light while waiting for JC in her art class, I would call him on the phone and I would tell him that I was following that wonderful example that he had afforded me decades before. Over the weekend, we came across an envelope which included the speech that my dad made at our wedding. It also included Sarah and Ron, Mark and Ross, my words to you when Joni passed away and Lloyd passed away, and I want to share those with you when we see you a little bit later. It was really a gift to see those words. I find it fortuitous that we found those words when I needed them the most, giving me, as they always did, guidance and support, while also curating great memories. In that speech, he referenced Papa's legacy, his father's legacy of love, and Ecclesiastes 3, with which I will conclude. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heavens, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and time to pluck up that which has been planted, a time to heal, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to dance, a time to embrace, and a time to love. Pop was a realist. He was down to earth, and that was the biologist in him. He would tell us that this is part of the life cycle, and not to mourn him, but to remember him when you hear summer morning bird song. You see a spider spinning a web. You're looking at a majestic mountain view, or standing at the shoreline, listening to nature's symphony. So at this time, I think we would really love it if you have some memories of Pop that you would like to share with us. It would be really wonderful. Kathy, I know, Kathy, I think she said that she wanted to, you wanted to mention some stories, and that would be great if you would start us off.
I don't, can you hear, is this good? Okay. I got to know Bill in about 1996 at the Y. It seems like the Y is the place to meet. And just about every day I would see him. He was working out, I was working out. He had a couple friends that he was always talking to people at the Y. He had some great friends that he met there. And then I got included in the circle of people that he would spend his time talking with. And we got to be really great friends. And at that time, I had known Bev because I had worked with her at the Psych Center. But I had no idea that Bev and Bill were married. I knew Bill from the Y and Bev from work. And one day I came into the Y and I saw Bill talking to Bev. She was on a treadmill. And I was saying, I'm going to go over and say hello, but it's strange that they're together. And so I went over and said hello, and they both gave me a warm hello. And I said, so what brings you, together here? And they said, we're married. It's like, oh, I never knew that. So that was my education there. So I knew them, for a while, before Bev died. And he was always a great person. He would always come over and say hello, and then we'd chat. And, of course, his great sense of humor, he was always telling jokes, which were, of course, very corny, or else a little bit off color. But we won't go there because, of course, he was a good guy, But he was a very kind, caring, and loyal person with a terrific sense of humor, as I said. He had a deep love of classical music, which we shared. He loved going to concerts, and that was a really great joy to him. Even just before the end, he would always ask if there were any concerts around. He didn't understand COVID and that, all the concerts had been canceled or that it was too dangerous to go because he was too, it was just not a good thing for him to do, and there really weren't any concerts locally playing. But that was his joy, and it also was my joy, classical music, and so we also bonded on that. And he became a really close friend of mine, a companion, and a very, just a lovely person, one that you can trust, and that's who he was. I mean, he was still a teacher in some ways, but he was also this other person who loved music, sense of humor, great person. He loved going to a concert, especially when it included a great dinner out. Loved that combination, because food and dinner out was one of his loves too. Whenever we went out, whether it was to the diner or someplace in town for something, to get something or whatever, we would run into former students. They would come up to him to say hello. And, he loved that. It made him feel good. And I could see that the students had really liked him. And it just contributed to my sense that he was a really good man with a great character, and that he had done when he taught, he must have been a really good teacher that really cared about his students, which is really, to me, heartwarming, because there aren't so many of them. There are good ones, but, he must have been one of the good ones, you can tell. And we even, after Bev died, I met him in ShopRite. And I had just lost my father. He had just lost Bev. We were both mourning. And he said, why don't we get together? Let's go to the coffee shop and talk and catch up, because I hadn't seen him for a while. And so we did, and he was, talking about Bev and talking about how much he missed her, and also what was going to be missing in his life, because he no longer had Bev to share it with. And he said, he's not going to be able to travel anymore because he's lost his traveling partner. And I said, well, if you ever want to go on the Trans-Siberian Railroad, I'll be happy to go with you. And I, half teasing. And he said, okay, let's go. So, and he kept, after me, when are we going to go? Let's do this. And so I found a tour and we went. And what do you know? But we were on the train from St. Petersburg to Moscow, and there's one of his students. Great reunion. Okay. So, and on that trip, which he called the trip of a lifetime, he loved it. He loved the train trip. It was, I don't remember how many hours, but we got on at Moscow, and it then took us to Ulan-Ude in Siberia, where we switched to another line that then went down into Mongolia, where we stopped for several days, and then went from Mongolia down to Beijing. And we were in China for a couple days before we flew home. And in Mongolia, I don't know if you saw, there's a picture of him with the eagle on his arm. That was taken in Mongolia. He just loved that. We were sleeping in a yurt, which of course he complained he was freezing, and he kept going out for more grass. Well, actually they were cow patties or whatever, but that's what they burned in the little fireplace thing to keep the yurt warm, because he thought I was cold. I was very warm, but he loved that. And then they got us dressed up to go to, there was one family there that was a native family that they had living there. And they dressed us up in the native costumes to take pictures, and then they had us have a little meal with them, including hot mare's milk and a few other things, which I'm sorry I couldn't eat, but he tried. But his love for Beverly and Lynn was number one. He always talked about Bev, and I know his love was always number one, for Bev. She was a great woman. I knew her too, and she was a very kind, caring woman. But a better, more loyal friend, more caring friend could not be found. And I'm going to miss him very deeply. I will always remember him. He's been the largest part of my life for a number of years. And he's just been he's been a person I can trust, I care about, and he goes deep in here. I'm so glad that I met him. I'm going to miss him, but he helped me through a lot, and I think I helped him go through things too. And it was just a pleasure and an honor to have him in my life, and I'm so much going to miss you, Bill. I am. So I give you my condolences, because I know he's more than that to you, and I really, I'm with you. My thoughts are there for you. Thank you.
So Lynn and I had been spending a lot of time the last few days sharing different memories of Bill, as Lynn has tried to put together different thoughts. And a fun memory I thought I would share is my first meeting with Bill. And so initially he didn't want to meet with me. He didn't want to get involved. He had dealt with past of Lynn's friends and boyfriends, and was like, you know what, don't want to be involved. So I'd met with Bev. We had gone to Friendlies and shared a meal, and I guess Beverly had pulled him aside and said, listen, you got to meet with this kid. So our first meeting was actually at the Unitarian Universalist Church. I went to a service there, and it was a Halloween service. And many of you know the UU Church really well. Will not be surprised by this. For those of you that are not part of the UU Church, it's the Unitarian Universalism is all about learning from all of the world's religions and understanding the different things that it gives us and teaches us. And that day, because it was a Halloween service, we were learning from what was known in the world of Wicca and different the spirituality connection to the earth. And it was actually a very, very nice service. But so Bill and I are sitting in the back, and at one point, a couple of the presenters who were talking about Wiccanism did decide they were going to attempt a levitation at the front of the congregation. Just punchline, by the way, nothing levitated, but our spirits. And so my first real words of conversation between me and Bill were watching this, and I'm sitting there, and basically so we're sitting there, a physicist and a biologist, and he leans over to me and says, "This levitation thing. I think Isaac Newton said something about this, in terms of what you need for levitation. Equal and opposite forces." And, we had a bit of a chuckle, and respectfully, we had a bit of a chuckle in the back row, and that was my first meeting with Bill. And in the time since, have just come to love and respect him so much, and have been thrilled and privileged to be a part of his family, and will miss him terribly. But from the first meeting through today, it's just been just a wonderful, wonderful person to have in my life, and thank you.
My name is Adam. Lynn and I have been best friends since we were 8 years old. And even as kids and teenagers, we got to know Bill and Beverly, but not just as Mr. and Mrs. Schraer, not just as Lynn's parents, but as friends. They were always both so loving, caring, and concerned. I'll never forget, we would go over to the house for birthday parties or for a movie night, but before you went downstairs to the basement, Bill would sit you down and talk to you. And it wasn't just to say hi or anything. It was out of true concern as of what was going on with your life, how you were doing, how school was doing. And even in a manner of, if you felt that there was something going on that you could not speak with anyone else to, you could speak with him. And they were just both always such great people, and I know all of you know that already. Although I had not seen him in many years, the cherished memories of those conversations will always, always hold a dear place in my heart.
So hi, I'm Sarah. I'm Bill's niece. Today's a tough day. But as a child, I had a lot of fond memories of our visits together. Bill, Bev, Lynn would come up and we'd wait for them. And my mother would always say, okay, it's 6 o'clock, they're supposed to be here. Where are they for dinner? Always fashionably late. And it would be a joke. So then we got to thinking, okay, we're going to tell them they need to be here at 5. So that way they were there at dinner at 6. And that worked pretty well. But as a kid, we did a lot of fun things together. Lynn said, we went to the Cape. I remember the first time I ever saw Jaws was in the Chatham movie theater. And that was together. My parents were not big movie buffs, but Aunt Bev and Uncle Bill and Lynn and I decided to go to Jaws. And I remember being scared to death of that movie, but it was the most fun experience. that we had, I think, one on that vacation. Bev and Bill would always arrive, and it was a 4-hour trip, and it was a long trip. And I would remember Aunt Bev, she'd get to the table and she'd start, doing her little leg lifts and a little ballerina. She was a wonderful skater and always very athletic and always a lot of fun to talk to. Always, so pleasant and nice, and, probably one of the nicest aunts, that I had. She was always very interested, just like Uncle Bill, about what was going on. The past few years, actually, I have to say, Uncle Bill did cherish Lynn and Dave and JC and Bev, all through. They were the most important people in his life. But he also, cherished extended family. He would often talk about, cousin so-and-so or cousin Dorothy, and some of these people I had never heard of, or Dinny, and, Ted and Lena, and, had lots of family stories that he would share. But I really do appreciate the fact that over the past few years, Bev, he would often talk about Bev and Lynn and call me and say, we really need to keep in touch and we really need to talk. So he was always, I was very grateful for that he always initiated those conversations. And, it was funny because Maxine would be in the background trying to help him and dial. And I was grateful for all the assistance that Maxine, would give to him too. I'm sure dialing the telephone was a challenge at times too. So lots of fond memories, not just one in particular, but so many. I remember when we were kids, the biggest thing, they'd come to Fall River and we all had to go to Swank, which was a leather store that was in the next town over. And we would literally all pile in the car. And he always seemed to have a small car, but we always had to fit like 20 people in the car, all to go to Swank and get the leather belt and a new wallet and, all sorts of fun things. So it was, a good time. And lots of Christmases and, holidays together. And I'm very grateful and hope that we can continue those.
My name's Ross. I think my favorite memory of him was he would come to Thanksgiving dinner at our house with Lynn and JC and Dave, and he would always tell us, he'd sit down and he'd say, don't look in chapter 23. So of course, Mark and I would naturally run upstairs, open up the textbook, and look in chapter 23. And of course, he knew them all by heart, since he wrote the book, that was the reproductive system. So every year he'd walk in and he'd tell us that, and every year we'd run up there and we'd open it up and look again. I think that must be my favorite memory.
So in 1978, the movie Superman came out, and that was out there. But before that, my dad said, "Movie Pinocchio showing in Monticello. Let's go see Pinocchio." And so, get to the theater in Monticello. It was Pinocchio, all right, but it was Pinocchio triple X. That's how we came to go see Superman that day. That was not the intent, but the pop saved the day, and Daddy's like, you don't want to know. You don't know. Really, it's just
Good morning. Can you hear me through the mask? Okay. I guess I just wanted to come up and say something as somebody who didn't have the pleasure of knowing Bill, Dr. Bill as I called him, as intimately well as many of you. But I guess I just wanted to bear witness to the fact that when somebody's a really fine person, their energy shines, right? And it touches you. And it touched me and Andrew. We knew Bill through the UU at Middletown. So he was like an acquaintance to us, but obviously important enough that we're here today, standing here for Dr. Bill. And at the UU, I sometimes gave talks about Wicca. I was not one of the levitators. I know nothing of that. I often tell people, I'm kind of a Wiccan, but I'm not a fundamentalist Wiccan. But I do think the spiritual messages from the ancient Celtic culture that honor justice and courage and doing no harm. Do you know how hard that is to do no harm when we live in a dysfunctional culture? Anyway, so I would sometimes give sermons, presentations on that, and Bill would sit through them. And he was always, always brought his intelligence to bear when we had conversations about anything at the coffee hours. But as Bill knew, some of you know, through the miracle of internet, I educate myself for free, take lessons in Irish and Scots Gaelic, Duolingo. And yesterday I was taking a class with a native speaker. This does come back to Bill, by the way. I was taking a class with a native speaker in the Highlands of Scotland through Zoom, And I'm hearing his seagulls and he's hearing, the birds of Hudson Valley sing. And he asked me what's going on. So I said, 2 funerals this week. I went to 2 funerals. One was for, Bill's friend and our friend, Walt Garner. They often sat in the back of the church together, throwing spitballs, I guess, in a very gentlemanly way. That's really not true. I'm probably more the type to do that, but anyway. So the teacher was telling me the word for funeral in Scots Gaelic. Literally, it translates to a gift to God. We're offering a gift to God. You talked about completing the biological life cycle. Complete, consummated, a gift to God. So I just wanted to share that. I think it's beautiful. Rest in peace and power, Bill, Dr. Bill.
We normally would have a service that it's very long, and I see everybody's getting up, and I'm trying to keep it in time and short as we can. So I have words for Bill because he was very important to the American Legion and to all the veterans associations because he was a veteran. He was a 25 years member of the American Legion, and while he was able, attended every function and every meeting. Bill was always an active member. Bill was always positive in everything he encountered. One of his favorite things was working with students and young students. While he was able, he attended the screening of, we have a program called Boy State, where we send boys to Morrisville College to learn citizenship and workings of government. And he would always be there to help select the candidates. He was always active in the ice cream booth. We had at Otisville Country Fair, we had, as a fundraiser, a ice cream booth. Along with that, we would have the Honor Society of Minnesink Valley High School would come and work with us to gain hours for their service. Bill couldn't wait to that started because he was so able and so always wanted to be with children, not children, young people. And he enjoyed every minute of it. By the time they were done, because we had over 4 days, probably 12 shifts, every one of them would have their life plan in front of them. Because he would sit down to, okay, what do you want to do? What do you enjoy? It didn't matter what anybody else wanted. He wanted to know what they wanted. And so it was always very interesting, and it was actually gratifying for Bill to be there with us. Bill, 3 years ago, Bill was named Veteran of the Year by the town of Mount Hope. We will always miss Bill, and he will always be missed by everyone that knew him. He will never be forgotten. Dear friend, comrade, we leave you now.
Good morning again. I'm not a speaker, but 3 years and months, almost 2.5 years, was my first time knowing Middletown or even heard of Middletown. And when I got the job to take care of Bill. When I got the job, they said it was a short term. So I wasn't expecting to be there that long. Maybe a month or two, but I was there for 3 years. And as I was saying to Lynn the other day, that it's as if I got my PhD. It's as if I was in school. He would encourage me so much, go back to school, go back to school. And I'm like, Bill, I'm 50. I can't go to school now. I'm not going to take anything. But he would encourage me. What you want to do? What you want to do? What you want to do? So I tell him one day I want to open my business, which is residential assistant living. Didn't have a clue what I was going to do or how I was going to start. And one morning he said to me, we're going to go for a ride. So we went for the ride. On our way he said to me, Maxine, you have your driver's license? And I said, driver's license doesn't drive. And he said, no, you need the driver's license. And I said, okay, I have it. And I didn't know the place at all, so he directed me to Dawson Avenue by the Orange County and Trust Bank. And he went in there and he said, I need the best financial advisor I could get in here. They brought out the best financial advisor. And we went into a room. Remember, when I got the job, I just came for 1 week from Canada. I was living in Canada for 1 week. And I said, let me do something for a week or two and then go back. And this is why I ended up 3 years after. So we went to the bank. I didn't have credit at all. They were like, I've never seen a grown woman without credit. We had to go back. We did the meeting. We had to go back. They tell me what to do and everything. When we got home, Bill is like, you know what they told you, Maxine? They told you to bill your credit based on people that have money. People that, not you. Let me tell you what to do. When you get this $300 credit card, you're going to pay, because the guy at the bank would say, use it and pay it all. Lynn said no. Bill said no. You pay 15 days before it due, and pay some 15, and then pay 5 days before the amount due, then you pay everything. So I said, that is the best way. And that thing built my credit to an 8.0. The school, he was still going, school. He would never leave me in this school. I end up doing the course for assistant living, graduated. Since I'm here, I've done so much because he wouldn't leave my neck. He was always, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. But trust me, I say this to say that a lot of people would say to me, how you do it, how you manage, how you what. But I guess everybody know who Bill is. So that should answer the question. That's why it's so easy for me. He makes this job so easy. When he passed, my sister said to me, Maxine, you got to go out in the real world now. This job won't be so easy like Bill. But trust me, it has been a wonderful, wonderful 3.5 years. I told him to leave his brain to me. But the other day they were talking, and we came here, and somebody was saying, is he donating any parts? I'm like, he was supposed to give me the brain. But, it's been a pleasure. Lynn, Dave, and JC, you guys have accepted me with so much kindness, love, and appreciation. And I will never forget you guys. Not to mention Bill. I will never forget him. We have so much secrets, so much. Because of the dementia, he would repeat himself. And I say to people, would say, why are you so patient? Why are you so this? But just the way how he said it would interest me. So I have to listen to him 2 or 3 more times. But trust me, it's been a pleasure being in Middletown. It's been a pleasure knowing Middletown because I've been around. I've been around. Every day we would be somewhere. He loves the street. Everywhere. Everybody knows him. I've become a celebrity. They would call him the local celebrity of Middletown. And behind him becomes a celebrity. I remember one more story and I'm done. I remember the first time he told me that there was a prison in Middletown, somewhere in Bull something up there, yeah. So I said, okay, I like prison because my dad was a police officer and stuff, so I'm like prison. So we're going to go for a ride and go by the prison. So going up to the prison, I thought we could go around. So going up to the prison, I realized we have to go inside the prison. We can't go around. So I'm like, okay, Bill, we cannot go around. We have to turn back. So we started to reverse. There comes the police. There comes the gate open. Loudspeakers. Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. So I'm like, oh gosh, Bill, we're in trouble. You got to bail me. And we take our time and we're going up. And as soon as we reach close to the door, it was like a dozen police officers, big guns drawn, everything. And I'm like, oh God. They came around to my side. I'm like, license and registration. What are you doing up here? And they were like, and I'm like, I'm coming for a drive. And they're like, no, you can't come. And they start. So while he was there talking to me, and then another police came on the other side and he's like, Dr. William Schraer? I'm like, wow, you saved me. Then everybody dropped arms, everything. It was like about 6 of them was his student. So everybody keep on coming out, so we didn't get arrested that day. But everywhere, the pharmacy, the coffee shop, everybody knew Bill. And again, it's been a pleasure, guys. Been a pleasure working in Middletown. but it's come to an end and I have to leave Middletown. So thanks again, everybody. I'm Bill. I'll never forget you. Thank you. I found one poem that seems like it would be perfect for Will, so it goes like this. Teacher, you're the heart of every classroom and the soul of every school, the mind behind the message that learning is cool. Your patience and understanding cannot be undersold. Your courage and commitment is that of legends told. Each day you teach our children is a day to rejoice. Because of you, our children will have their own voice. So thank you, dear teacher, for passing knowledge through the years. You thought you were merely teaching when you were culminating fear, climbing and eliminating fears. So thank you. I thought, I know some of the his former students, people today, successful adults, and everybody says, like you just heard, that he was a very, very special teacher and had a very special way of reaching his students. So at this time, we want to say again, thank you to all of you for being here with the family. We are now going to be traveling to Howell Cemetery. It's a rural cemetery. It's very nice. It's not too busy most of the time. And so we're going to ask if you can go with us. We'd like you to do that. We would like you to turn on your four-way flashers so that as we drive out, people will know that we're in a funeral procession. And we're going to ask you if you will go to your cars. And at that time, Barry, our other funeral director, will be escorting you to the cemetery. And there will be a time for everybody to say their goodbyes at the cemetery and possibly leave a little flower for Will. Thank you so much, everyone, and God bless you all. Have a good day.